Good evening. It's 19:05 in London. I'm Dave King and this is Nikki Scott, and these are the Together Talks. Welcome once again to this Tuesday evening talk fest where we showcase some of the brightest, the best, and even the wittiest speakers from around the world for you to put your questions to.
That's right, and we've been thrilled with the audience numbers and feedback from around the world who've been joining us either on Zoom or YouTube. Many more have been catching up with the Together Talks recordings on the Rotary in Great Britain and Ireland YouTube channel. And I've heard recently of a few clubs who are now arranging their meetings so members can watch the Together Talks either live or recorded and hold a discussion afterwards, hopefully inviting others from their community to join them, because let's be clear, Together Talks is for everyone. Right, Dave?
Absolutely. And so tonight, that audience can hear the comedian, the author, and the broadcaster, Tony Hawks. He's a man who once walked around Ireland with a fridge. He attempted to defeat every member of the Moldovan football team at tennis as part of a drunken bet, and he's performed on Albanian television with Norman Wisdom in a bid for pop chart success, all of which were turned into best-selling books. Tony is an ambassador for the charity Child Aid, which works with vulnerable and disabled children in Belarus, Moldova, Siberia, and Ukraine. And in April, Tony decided to write an original song about the coronavirus for charity. So, see if you can spot a few familiar faces with the tune Lockdown.
Can't go out to the city, get one free trip to the store. I don't want your pity, but what am I living for? I'm in lockdown, and I'm beginning to find that in lockdown, life is a bind. I'm in lockdown, completely resigned to lockdown, and I'm slowly going out of my mind. Oh, I don't know what to do anymore. I mean, I must have pretty much done everything there is to do. Walked to the post office and back the other day, but that wasn't very exciting. Maybe I should do it in shorts. Yeah, that might liven it up a bit. I wanna break for cover, wanna set myself free. I wanna get out of here. I wanna be with my lover, even if she doesn't wanna be with me. I'm in lockdown, and I'm beginning to find that in lockdown, life is a bind. I'm in lockdown, completely resigned to lockdown, and I'm slowly going out of my mind. Oh, I don't know, what am I gonna do with myself? I mean, Sainsbury's isn't very interesting, is it? Neither's Asda or Lidl, they're all slightly dull. No toilet paper anyway, that's the only bit I enjoy. Staring off into the distance, getting to know the real me. Oh dear, can't stand this new existence, 'cause I'm sick of my own company. I'm in lockdown, I'm beginning to find that in lockdown, life is a bind. I'm in lockdown, completely resigned to lockdown, and I'm slowly going out of my mind. Still, look on the bright side. Only another 6 months. That'll fly by. Maybe I was being a little too pessimistic. I mean, let's face it, be September before you know it.
Well, I don't know about anyone else, but I spotted a few famous faces in there for sure. Stephen Fry, Tim Rice, Sandy Toksvig. What a fantastic, catchy tune. We're all going to be singing that all the rest of the evening. And it's raising money for the Daily Telegraph's coronavirus appeal, and specifically the charity Turn to Us, which is providing emergency grants for people in the UK who have been hardest hit financially by this lockdown.
So hopefully, not too far away in Devon, we should be able to welcome tonight's guest, Tony Hawks. Good evening.
Good evening to you.
Well, that's
There we are.
thank you very much for coming on, Tony. What an amazing song. How did that all come about? Where did the inspiration come from?
Well, I suppose when everyone went into lockdown, it was a shock, wasn't it? And I was sitting at the piano, and I just sort of came up with this idea. And I thought, well, maybe shall I write a little song about being in lockdown? And it just popped out quite quickly. I mean, this can happen with songwriting particularly, that you just come up with something and it flows out. I'm not saying I'm an Elton John or anything, but I remember some of his best songs took him about 10 minutes. But I think some songs require huge amounts of kind of refinement, but this was just brain dumped some thoughts about lockdown, and it was done. And then I recorded it at home, and then sent it to the Telegraph because they approached me about, could I help? And before 2-3 days later, we'd done it. Pretty quick.
The video showcases a very impressive contacts book.
It does, doesn't it? I mean, I think what really made it take off was Steve. I emailed Stephen Fry, who, I go back ages. I did the warm-up for the first series of A Little Bit of Fry and Laurie. I was the audience warm-up man. And they got me in a few sketches, and he's always been very nice to me. I've subsequently worked with him on Just a Minute and QI and things. So he's always very friendly. I emailed him, didn't expect him to come back. He came back straight away, sent the clip, and of course I then sent it to other people saying Stephen Fry's doing it, and everyone jumped into line. I think that made the difference, really. Every time you can say I've got Stephen Fry, Sandy Toksvig, Alexander Armstrong, whoever. Then people think I'd like to join that gang,
Very good. I've got a question from Alan Jasper, who asks, how has the current lockdown affected you?
In a way, I think like a lot of people, I think I'm one of the lucky ones. I live in a house with a garden. The weather's been incredible. It's actually helped me in some ways to dig out some projects that have been buried for ages and that I've never really gone back to. I had a screenplay that I was working on and a kid's book, and I was forced into digging those out and working, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, really. I've got no income for the rest of the year, but I've got enough saved, so I'm not moaning. But it's going to be really shocking for a lot of people. But the actual lockdown itself has not been too bad.
I know you sort of fear. We spoke about this earlier, actually, when we chatted before the show. That there's a fear, perhaps, about how the entertainment industry is going to come out of coronavirus. What are your thoughts?
Very badly damaged. I mean, particularly theatre. I mean, I think it could be a sort of 3 years before the theatre is the same, if it ever gets the same. If you think the West End of London now has been closed completely, all those theatres shut, all those restaurants nearby shut, the hotels empty, the bars, they're all taking such a massive economic hit. And then, of course, if you come back and you have to have social distancing still, that doesn't fit the business model for theatres. They've got to be full at the weekends, otherwise, they can't pay everyone's bills. So, gloomy in a way, but it'll come back. But it's just going to be very hard for everyone. They'll have to get out and do a proper job, won't they? Stop poncing around pretending to be someone else.
Nikki, take us on to a lighter beat.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I know it's such a serious time, but I'm sure I speak for many, Tony, when I say that the arts and humour has got many of us through so many difficult times and carried so many people through. So much of that has been prevalent. Now, you've made quite a name for yourself along the way about silliness.
Yeah.
Specifically something to do with carrying a fridge around Ireland, I believe. So could you just tell us about your love of silliness?
Yes. Well, I actually a long time ago, I took on this daft bet that I could hitchhike round the circumference of Ireland with a fridge. And I decided to take this bet on. I could have easily not done it. And I went off and did it. And I had an incredible time. The Irish loved the silliness. The geez, they eat it with the fridge there. They eat it. And I wrote a book about it. And the book did phenomenally well. And it's nearly sold 1 million copies now. And it obviously tapped into something in people, which is they want to laugh. They want to be silly. I think, you know, we start off playing, don't we, as kids, and we tend to stop playing a bit. And I've always been someone who's sort of gone, if we're sitting around waiting, has sort of invented a game where you've got to throw a bit of paper into a bin or something like that, just to play. I've always liked to play. And recently I actually turned this into a TED talk, which I did, which is I tried to advocate silliness as being a vital ingredient in life. But we do need to laugh. And I suppose one of the difficulties of this pandemic and the lockdown is that we're not able to get into groups and laugh together collectively. That's sorely missed. So when that comes back, I think maybe that will be the big rebound of the theatre, is that people really want to go out and really want, they've done enough of watching Netflix. They want to go out again. So that's what I hope does happen. And go out and be silly as well.
Yeah, there's definitely health benefits to having a good laugh, that's for sure. And you've managed to make a living out of being a comedian. And Cressida Dickens asks, how important is humour as a communication tool?
Well, it is a bit like an oxygen, isn't it? Where you do need to laugh, and particularly in places like Northern Ireland, they developed, a very black sense of humour during the Troubles. They had to laugh; it was a survival mechanism. And as a means, it's a very strong in satire. Politicians are very afraid of people that can make people laugh. Politicians hire writers to come up with funny lines for them. You can ridicule someone so much more effectively if you can make someone laugh. So it's an important tool, and therefore, as a result, it's got to be used, in my opinion, used wisely and used in a loving way. The downside of comedy is that you laugh and mock people, and that I don't like that. I don't like just slagging someone off. I think work a bit harder and find a way of being funny without doing that.
Absolutely. Well, the topic today, of course, is how do we give the best of ourselves? And it's been interesting getting to know you a little bit through our conversations, Tony, and how you've taken your life through this joyous path and a really alternative way to defining success, which I really admire, by the way. But it's taken you into a new direction slightly and more of a philanthropic side. And Richard Burnett asks, do you think that we are able to understand what is the best of ourselves?
I think it's a very difficult thing, because I'm not sure that we're given terribly good examples as we're growing up. So one of the things I was sort of hoping that might come out of this pandemic is that we might have a new set of heroes. And we certainly do at the moment. I just wonder how long that will last. But if you think we've got, I think I might have got this wrong, but I think I might have caught a glimpse of Paul Pogba, the Manchester United footballer, sort of having 41 million followers on Twitter. And and people want to know what he thinks about, what's happening in America now, whatever. And you think, well, he's good at kicking a football. It's like, it's very strange the way, that these people have got enormous influence over a skill like that. And somebody who might have devoted their life to giving for others will probably have about 20 followers on Twitter. So I suppose that's the difficult thing, is that we've got the wrong heroes dangled in front of us. I'm not slagging these people off for a moment. It's great that they do the great achievements they do. But I think we need a shift so that we can go get more guidance in how to give the best of ourselves. And from a very young age, kids want stuff. Christmas comes along and they endlessly want this and they want that and they want that. So we're taught to want stuff. And that's a very difficult thing. And then it takes a long time to work out in your life that stuff that you want doesn't really translate into anything lasting in terms of happiness or fulfillment. So we need to change that. We need to teach it differently.
We do. And before, as Pablo Picasso famously said, the purpose of life is to discover your gift, and the meaning of life is to give it away. So I think you speak to that very well. Dave, have you got another question?
Well, an observation, actually, Tony. I've read the books, loved them all, but the one I really enjoyed most was the tennis book, Playing Tennis with the Moldovans. That was another drunken bet. How did that happen?
Well, we weren't drunk to start with, I hasten to add. We basically, the bet happened when I was playing, I'd played tennis and I'd gone around my mate Arthur Smith's house to watch an England football match. England made Moldova in the World Cup qualifiers, and out of the blue he said, I don't reckon you're that good at tennis, Hawks. I don't reckon you could beat all those footballers we're watching now. They're rubbish, you know. You're rubbish at tennis. And I said I would be able to beat the footballers. You know, footballers aren't very good at tennis, and I'm good. You know, I've had a history of playing tournaments, this kind of stuff. Anyway, we argued, and in the end I said, well, look, can we stop arguing now? I'd never be able to play the England players. They'd never agree to play me, so let's forget it. And he said, well, I bet you couldn't beat the entire Moldovan national team. They'll play you. And what's more, if you do and you succeed and you beat them all, I'll strip naked in Balham High Road and sing the Moldovan national anthem. So this was when a couple of pints had gone down in the pub. So I decided to do this. And the honest truth is that the first bet I took on, this Round Island with a Fridge thing, I just went on spec and just sort of did a crazy thing. And this second bet that I took on, the publishers were asking me, the other book's selling quite well, you know, what have you got? What other ideas have you got? And I told them this idea. And they said, well, we love the idea, but don't go to Moldova. No one knows where it is. Probably a few nervous people watching now, reaching for the atlases. But I said, well, that's the point. The point of this is, I didn't really know where it was when I took the bet on. The point is, it's a little known country. No one knows anything about it. That's what interests me about going there. So they reluctantly agreed. And that's it. Ended up going there and having this extraordinary adventure and writing a book that couldn't have been more different to Round Island with a Fridge. I mean, Ireland was a place where they positively embraced eccentricity and eccentrics. And Moldova, I discovered when I got there, was a country where they formally imprisoned people who were eccentric. There was nothing in their culture to understand why someone would do what I was doing. So it was like being smacked in the face when you got there. But the book's still available in all leading bookshops.
And it's a good read. When you were in Moldova, Tony, you met Diana and Grigori, and they were two doctors who were ultimately going to change your life. Yes. Well, I mean, I think Moldova changed my life in that when I got there, I realized I was going to write a book. I'd been given an advance by the publishers to write a book about doing something silly in the poorest country in Europe. And I'm talking real poverty that I hadn't seen in Europe before. I'd seen it in the third world. And I thought, well, this is not right. You know, this is ethically, I've got a problem with this. So I decided there and then that I would, if I ever finished this book, and at this point it was going very badly anyway, I managed to get any of the footballers to play with me. But I said, if I ever manage to finish this book and get it done and out, I'll split the royalties 50-50 between myself and a trust fund to do something in Moldova. So I said to the publishers, only give me half the money and we'll put the rest somewhere else. And suddenly there was enough to do something meaningful. I didn't know what to do. So I rang Diana and Grigori, the two doctors who were lovely and who I just stayed with when I was there. And they said, well, we really want to look after the children who are encouraged by the state to special needs kids, cerebral palsy, they're encouraged by the state to give them up to these orphanages. We'd like them to be able to stay with their families, and we'll put a centre in that will help the families and give treatment to the children. And that's it. We set up this centre. It's been running ever since with the help of Child Aid, who are an amazing charity. Between us, we run the place, really. I mean, they do most of it now. I do fundraisers and I do what I can, but without them, and we're teaching Diana and Grigori as well how to reach out to other European countries, other funds as well. I've got a question from the Rotary Club of Wensfield near Wolverhampton, who I know have been actively involved with the project in Moldova. And they're saying, what impact do you think that this investment with the Tony Hawk Centre has had on individuals and society as a whole?
Well, certainly for the individuals who go to the centre, whose children go there, I mean, it has, I know for a fact it's been an absolute life changer. I mean, if you're a single mum, or the benefit system, if the pension, the state pension for someone who's retired in Moldova is €40 a month. And if you go to a Moldovan shop, it's not a lot cheaper than England. In fact, no cheaper at all in some cases for certain products. So the poverty levels and the struggle is incredible. So they can go to this centre, get free treatment, mix with other people, get camaraderie. And then on another level, in terms of society, I mean, in Moldova, when I first got there, there's a real kind of, how can you put it, just prejudice against disabled, handicapped, special needs people. And it was not unusual for a father to leave the mother if the mother had had given birth to a handicapped child. When we started the Tony Hawk Centre in Chișinău, there was a petition to try and stop it from the local residents who didn't want disabled children coming into the area. So we got involved, and I went over, and we went to this Moldova TV and various things, and this one of the TV channels, Journal TV, ran a campaign to change the way people think. And once the local residents also realised that we would put in some new plumbing that would improve their plumbing, they suddenly came on board as well. But it was great to see a campaign, if you like. It was Moldovans had no experience of the concept of a campaign, but this TV channel ran it and wanted to change the way people thought. And so by accident, we've also managed to make a difference to the way people thinking. I certainly hope we have.
Lovely. You talked to, sorry, didn't mean to come over you, Dave. Do you have one more?
No, I was just saying you made a difference to their plumbing as well, Tony. It's well done.
Absolutely. Well, that's mainly me. I'm mainly a plumber at heart.
So, Tony, you talked a lot about how giving of yourself helps you feel so much better and is actually really good for our health. And 3 people have a very good question. All of the same question, David Breton, Eve Conway, and Jennifer Allen. And it's very topical, is how do we give the best of ourselves during challenging times like lockdown? If it helps us makes us feel better, how do we maintain that during challenging times?
Yes, I mean, I think the difficulty with our sense of having to give and or do better or be charitable is that we're encouraged to think big. And then when you do that, you kind of think, well, what difference can I make? I'm just a drop in the ocean. I mean, I do my bit, and it's very little in a way. And you kind of think, what difference does it make? So that's why I do think it's actually, I see it myself as being quite selfish in giving, because I believe I do benefit from it. So I think that's one thing you can say is embrace that. And then be very unambitious, if you like, and say, I'm just going to get up today and I'm going to smile from 2 meters away. I'm going to be more forgiving, perhaps, than I have been about some people and some people in my family and some friends. I'll try to understand. The thing I've learned along the way is that, whenever anyone's not very nice to you, they're the ones that are in pain, really. And to try and think about that and then go, well, that doesn't mean I have to be their best friend, but I'm just not going to waste my time being angry with them. And also I'm going to leave the door open to them in some way so that they could, there's an opportunity for them to come back in. So I guess it's things like that. And those things aren't game changers. You haven't opened, you haven't opened a new charity, you haven't started it. But imagine what it would be like if we all did that. Then it's a game changer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Stephen Covey. He has a concept of assume innocence. And it is just a way of just not taking things personally and showing grace to some people. And I think that is a really wonderful thing. You just touched on the concept right there.
Yes. I recommend a guy called Marshall Rosenberg who started a thing called Nonviolent Communication. I stumbled upon his work online, and that's a very, it's a way of understanding conflict resolution and just understanding everyone's doing something for a reason, even if they're doing something that's not very nice. They're doing it to try and get a need met. And if you try and understand what that need is, you can then talk to them about persuading them to try and get that need met in a way that doesn't impact you in such a, disruptive way. And so the biggest thing that struck me about what he said is everyone's out there is playing a game called Who's Right? And particularly we see that going on in politics at the moment. So who's right? We had it over Brexit. We have it over, when we should open schools, when we're not. So it's a very, it's not a very helpful game to play who's right. It just leads to conflict, which is a shame.
Absolutely does. And one last question on giving the best of yourself relating to your careers, and you specifically, you're obviously a musician as well as a comedian, as we saw in the lockdown video. And Tony Hughes says, to what extent is it possible to replicate the energy of a live performance without a live audience? Can you give the best of yourself in that situation?
Well, you can always give the best of yourself, whether you're particularly entertaining. I don't know. I mean, I must admit, all the things that I've witnessed that used to have an audience and that now don't, in terms of the news quiz or Have I Got News for You, various shows, just don't. In fact, I was talking to John Naismith, the producer of I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue, and he's saying, what are we going to do in the autumn? Are we going to do these shows? Shall we do it? Would it work without an audience? And I was saying, no, we've got to have an audience, John. I don't know how we're going to do it. I suggested that we all record it in a park and mic everybody up, close mic everybody. So the answer to Tony's question, it was Tony, wasn't it, is that that is in a way that you can give the best of yourself, but it's very difficult because you can't feed off. You do when you're performing, particularly in comedy and to some extent, you feel what's in the room, and so does everyone else. And that's the magic of it. And whenever you watch anything on the screen, there's your environment. There's, somebody putting a kettle on, there's somebody making noise upstairs or whatever. So you're not really there, unless you sit in a darkened room and it's like watching a movie and you get swept away with it. But you watch a show, it's just the commitment of going to see something is wonderful. I'm going to see Tony Hawk's. Surely that's the biggest moment of my life, everyone will be thinking. Or who? You bought them for the wrong day. Anyway, but so that's the thing. I mean, I really miss that live audience thing, and I don't know when we'll get it back, but it'd be great when it comes back.
Tony, let me take you back to 7 years ago. Can you believe it? On a TED Talk, you said capitalism in its current form is not working. Actually, let's make billionaires history. And you talked about some sort of capping of wages, and maybe people who had earned a certain amount of money should, after that, should give the money to charity or set up a charitable trust. Do you still hang on to that thought?
More than ever. I mean, I think one of the things that doesn't really get talked about enough, in my view, we talk about billionaires. We talk about billionaires in terms, they get sort of quite a positive feedback in that, they must be creating jobs or so and so. It's like, it's unethical. It's 1 billion is 1,000 million pounds. 1,000 million pounds. The fact that a person can have 1 billion, let alone 6 billion or 8 billion, to me, I'm sorry, it's just obscene. It's not ethical. When we know that people are starving, we know people don't have enough. To me, it's like, how have we embraced a system that condones, not just condones it, encourages it? So what I'm saying is that we don't want to take away the profit motive. I saw how communism was terrible for the people in Moldova. I saw the remnants of it, so I'm not advocating that at all. Just saying we can have a conversation about why don't we cap it somewhere? What's enough? What's more than enough? And then imagine if you said to somebody 6 million's enough. Well, that's 994 million pounds they can then give to charity if they're a billionaire. And they can set up their own charity. They don't give it to the government. You say to them, come on, what do you want to do for the world? And where I think it's very strong is the state is not terribly good at administering money and running it. But if you imagine you've got brands and you get these entrepreneurs, you want them competing with each other to raise money, to run the ambulance service, or run this or do that. They'll do it really well because that's what they're good at. So I just think we could explore that, and we might need to explore something like that if this post, pandemic depression kicks in, because there could be a lot of unemployed, and we're going to need these entrepreneurs to come out of the woodwork and say, look, I don't need this money. If I leave it to my child, it ruins their lives. I mean, we have all the evidence is there.
Yeah, I think, Tony, you were ahead of the game, actually, because there's I happen to live in the States for 25 years. There's a big movement there now called conscious capitalism, and it's entrepreneurs creating a business for purpose. And so they donate, and the employees take an active role in how they donate their money. And I think that's moving more and more into Europe. So perhaps we should get you as a champion for that cause too.
I think so. I mean, I think the misunderstanding about money is that the people think that if they get more, they'll be happier. There's plenty of research that shows that isn't the case. You reach a certain point where, yes, it does make a difference, and I've reached that point in my life. I don't need any more. If somebody, if I had £1 million now, I'd spend it on other people, on doing something, because I've got enough. And so perhaps we need to learn much more about what is enough and talk about it much more with a view to improving conditions for all the people on the planet, really, and the animals as well. It's like what's destroying the planet and destroying our environment is this rush to get more and more and more. And it's absurd, but we do it. It's like we got these blinkers on. Here we go.
Definitely resonates with me. Redefining success. I think success, society breeds us to think it's to do with your paycheck, but actually significance is so much more rewarding. And we actually have the conscious capitalism guests coming up on Together Talks. So I think, you're definitely onto something there. Dave, have you got a few quick...
Well, in fact, from hearing what Tony was saying there, we've got one question here. It's anonymous, Tony, so it must be Boris. Asking why is there no actor? Why is there no poet? Why is there no writer? Why is there no one from the arts who's masterminding the government's response to COVID-19?
I think it's to do with who can be bothered to be a politician, really. And I feel a bit sorry sometimes for politicians, because I would not want to do it. I think Woody Allen said at one point, we're governed by the people who could be bothered to turn up. And to some extent, it's boring, what they have to do. And unfortunately, I think we haven't got what they ended up in the Czech Republic, didn't they? They did have a poet, didn't they? But if you go into that world, and the way we've designed it, you'll have your life ripped apart, you'll have your private life torn apart, you'll have the newspapers trying to trash you, make things up about you. It's not a very appealing place to go. So I think a lot of people who are interested in it and have been tempted by it shy away, because and in fact, one of the things I've enjoyed about the pandemic is the fact that the Houses of Parliament has not got this baying mob of people shouting at each other like childish school children. And I'd rather hope that would stay, because what you'll get is, when you get back in, is that Boris Johnson got a big majority, so you've got more people baying and shouting somebody who might be making a very good point down. It's very childish. It's incredibly immature. We should have moved on from something like that as well. I think more and more we need to sort of say, why do we do it this way? What's the point of doing it this way? What does it serve? So I think, I'm hoping with Keir Starmer, he's looking very much more at the moment like a man who's just going to ask insightful questions and try to debate things. When that chamber bit gets full again, it might have to change, and that would be a great shame.
Let's sort of end almost on a light note here. I've got a question about Tim Brooke Taylor. Got Alan here, who said he saw you performing live with Tim Brooke Taylor, the late.
What's that a light note? He died 4 weeks ago.
But what he's asking for is a favourite memory of him.
Oh, okay, I see what you mean.
Turn it around.
Oh, I mean, it was so recent. I mean, it's a funny thing, isn't it? When somebody dies who you've worked with or whatever, I laughed then. That's what Tim would have wanted. He was always laughing and joking. And we giggled all the time, when we did these recordings, we'd go for dinners and meals afterwards. I think my lasting memory, and this is so recent, because we did a show in Huddersfield just before lockdown. That hasn't gone out, sadly, because of Tim passing away. But it's watching him from behind, which no one else gets to do. So when he goes up to the microphone to do his silly songs and his whatever, in those silly high-pitched voices that he used to do, you're watching him wiggle and everything, and laughing at him from behind, and the audience watching you laugh was a kind of unusual dynamic and a happy memory.
So I know, Tony, you've actually spoken at a few Rotary meetings, and I don't believe you're a Rotarian yet, but there's several people here, including Roger Geet, who thinks you would make a very good Rotarian, because our motto is service above self, and that's clearly what you're talking about a lot tonight. So we've got less than 5 minutes left, and we need to start wrapping up. Once again, thanks to everybody for all these fantastic questions, and it's been entertaining, and as well as some really sensible, very good topics touched tonight. I really appreciated that. But Tony, the last thing we like to ask our guests is if you've got 2 to 3 key takeaways, because we want to make sure that we're people of action moving on from these Together Talks. So what would you say?
Well, I suppose we touched on the one, and was that thing of like, just think about it, what you can give in terms of just your everyday thing, and particularly your relationships with family and friends and things. Just think about that as an area where you might not have thought of giving. That could be. I was thinking another good thing, just second thing would be to check your motive. Whenever you're doing something or about to do something, check your motive and go, does that sit in line with, am I doing this for the general good, or is it just me, whatever? And just hang on in, be kind to yourself. That's the other thing. I suppose that gas mask, first thing they say on the plane, don't they? So we're able to give so much more when we feel good about ourselves. And sometimes we don't do that enough. We're not kind enough to ourselves. So do look after yourselves as well. I don't think that being charitable and kind is all about, hair, shirt and punishing yourself. No, have a good life, enjoy life, but just think, I've got a lot to give. And the happier you are, the more you can give.
Tony, thank you very much for that. I think you were weren't you a Sussex number 2 tennis player at one time? Many years ago?
I was. There's a junior who's slightly better than me now, so I've dropped to number 3.
Well, that, as I say, is game set for this week. So thank you very much for being our guest this evening, Tony. A great guest, and thank you to everyone for the questions, and good luck to you with your work in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it. Thank you. And bye-bye, everyone.
Take care. Goodbye. So next week, we've got Sanj Srikanthan, the Chief Executive of the Rotary Charities Shelterbox, whose theme will be Going the Last Mile as a Humanitarian. Going to be a great conversation with Sanj. I don't know if some of you saw him recently with John Huco. We're going to go into a deep dive on his personal story, which is going to be wonderful. And in the coming weeks, we've got next year's Rotaract President Heidi Eggleton and a former Rotaract President, Luke Addison, who's also now a Rotarian, discussing the value of being global citizens. So not all about Rotary, about why Rotary has connected them and their passion for life. That's June 16th. And then June 23rd, Roy Spencer on the subject of conscious capitalism, funnily enough, who advocates this wonderful concept for businesses. And he'll be joining us from Chicago to talk about elevating humanity through business. And then a week later, on June 30th, very excited to welcome Sylvia Whitlock from California, the woman responsible for enabling women to join Rotary. And her theme will be pushing the boundaries of Rotary.
So we've got a really exciting lineup over the next month, and I do hope you can join us. You can do so by registering with the Rotary in Great Britain and Ireland's Eventbrite page, and also logging on to RGBI's YouTube page, where you can also get reminders of upcoming talks and where you can also send in questions. And if you want to see Tony Hawk's lockdown video again, or catch up with any of tonight's Together Talks, then you'll find them all on YouTube. So please join us again next Tuesday, 19:05 for Together Talks. It's good night from Nikki, and it's good night from me.
Good night.